I wanted to do a follow-up video about catastrophizing parts, and just following from the previous video where I talked more about how that part does this role, and how we can maybe look at that part with a bit more compassion and acceptance, rather than wanting to get rid of it, or wanting it, or feeling like it's not being a very helpful part of our system. So that's really fantastic to be in a place where we can say to ourselves, great job, catastrophizing part, you're doing such a fantastic job. But that part, and when we ask it how long it's been doing this work for, and maybe what would it rather be doing, finding out if it actually, is this really what it wants to be doing? Is it stressed out? Is it feeling intense anxiety? Is that why it's coming up with the catastrophes? It's not as unlikely to be as simple as is it being sort of like a paid employee in a company, because oftentimes it will come with quite a high level of anxiety, and that anxiety will transmit into the rest of our system. It will blend with it oftentimes. So I think part of the move towards unblending is to sort of separate slightly from that part and just say, so that's what you're doing, and just because you're catastrophizing doesn't mean the catastrophes are going to happen, and it doesn't mean I'd rather you weren't here doing that. So we can separate slightly from it, and it won't feel like it's completely overwhelming our system. But the second job really is to say, okay, so now I've met you. When did you first come into my world? Because often this will be quite a young part that's taken on a role that's beyond its years. It's trying to protect the system from eventualities which are diverse potential realities. So it's doing a protective job. When did it start? And then if we can tune into when it started, we might sort of find, for me perhaps, my mum would get angry if I made a mess or something in the house and didn't tidy up after myself or something like that, or if I wasn't well behaved in one way or another. And so I would not necessarily be able to understand what things were going to get me into trouble, and perhaps in school as well. I'm going to school and I get into trouble for this and that thing, and I'm not really predicting what those things are. So my catastrophizing parts will be having a lot of work on their hands, thinking, what can I do? What can I do to prevent myself getting told off? And what can I do to fit in, make people think I'm well behaved and not get into trouble? And so this part might be taking on this role of anticipating what's going to get me into trouble, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense. I can't really anticipate what things I'm doing wrong, so it goes on a wide search of finding ways to prevent that from happening. So that might have started happening when I was quite young perhaps, and then it just grew, that it expanded its role as I went into school and then into secondary school and so on, and then eventually as an adult it expanded its role more. And at no point did I go back and say to this part, you know what, we're older now, we don't really need to be anticipating and second guessing what's going on for other people, and we don't need to be planning for every eventuality. Actually, that was quite a successful strategy when we were young, when we didn't really have any other options, but now things have changed. So that's kind of like the secondary part of the catastrophizing parts video, which I didn't really cover in the first one. And connecting to that young part, really feeling into its reasons for doing what it's doing, and allowing it to speak. I'm really frightened. I'm doing this because I'm really frightened, you know. Like, wow, thank you so much for sharing that. And imagine if you were the employer of this the boss of the company, and you had a part who was brilliant at catastrophizing, and they came into your company, and you're the boss. So you say to them, how long have you been doing this kind of work for? And they say, well, actually, since I was 3 years old, and I always used to get into trouble because I didn't tidy up my toys. So I was always thinking, how can I tidy up my toys better? And it's a very sad story of this childhood development of this role. And the employer might say to themselves, wow, this is not a happy reason that you're in this work. Do you want to be doing this work? Is there anything I can do to support you to be doing something different? Because actually it sounds like it's kind of emerged out of some quite traumatic early development, but maybe a little bit worse even than having to tidy up your toys all the time, or else risking getting into trouble. But so as a kind of mature and responsible employer, you might want to support your member of staff to investigate, just really dig into why they've chosen this career, and potentially change the career, if they don't want to be doing it, or maybe with a few perks, like maybe a bit more fun, so they're not sort of locked in this office catastrophizing all the time. And so when I watched that video again, the catastrophizing parts, when I sort of realised there's this extra level which I didn't really cover at all. The catastrophizing part doesn't necessarily want to be doing that job, and it doesn't necessarily want to be sort of locked in the office and be turned to for for the potential of the catastrophes or whatever, or for the energy around sort of the protective kind of energy. So letting that part be a fuller than that role, full being in its own right, with its own self, with its own direction, with its own vision for its own life. And this can be quite beautiful, emotional connection to make with the part. Like with every part, when we really listen to it and give it a chance to be itself. So hopefully that's a good addition to that previous video. Thank you.